Hello, welcome everyone to our MacKids School and Library preview event where we will be previewing our Spring 2021 list of titles. My name is Mary Van Aken. I'm the Director of Publicity at Macmillan Children's Publishing Group. Kristen and Elise, can you join us and introduce yourselves?
Hi everyone, I'm Kristen Luby, Marketing Manager for the School and Library team. Thank you all for joining us today. We're so grateful that you're here.
Hi everyone, I am the Marketing Coordinator here at MacKids School and Library. Excited to buzz about some books with you. Talk to you soon.
So we're excited to give you a preview of our Spring 2021 list of titles, including picture books, chapter books, middle grade, and young adult titles from all of our imprints at MacKids. Those imprints include Feiwel and Friends, Farrar Straus Giroux books for young readers, Henry Holt books for young readers, First Second, Roaring Brook Press, and Odd Dot. A few housekeeping notes before we begin. In the chat, you'll see a link for a full list of titles we're discussing today. In the digital review copy column for picture books and graphic novels, you can click through to read a digital review copy on issue. Please do not share these links as they are used for review purposes only. In the digital review copy column for middle grade and young adult titles, you'll find a link to review the book on NetGalley. Just to note that if you're using the NetGalley link, you should be logged into NetGalley before you click the links, and that's what's going to take you to the title page. As we only have 1 hour to present, this is not our full list of titles. Please subscribe to our MacKids School and Library e-newsletter to keep up to speed with all of our new and upcoming releases. If you are live tweeting today, please use hashtag MacKidsPreview. And finally, we expect all participants to maintain an atmosphere of respect and fairness. Anyone who violates the standard of behavior, including engaging in any form of harassment, may, at the discretion of the organizers, be immediately removed. So with that, I'm going to hand the mic back over to Kristen to introduce our special guest for today's preview, Adriana Cuevas.
Thank you, Mary. I have the pleasure of introducing Adriana Cuevas, the author of the 2021 Pura Belpré Honor Book, The Total Eclipse of Nestor Lopez. She is a first-generation Cuban-American, originally from Miami, Florida. After teaching Spanish and ESOL for 16 years, she decided to pursue her passion for storytelling. Adriana currently resides outside of Austin, Texas, with her husband and son, where they enjoy hiking, traveling, and cooking lots of Cuban food. Her next book, Cuba in My Pocket, will be on bookshelves September 21st, 2021. Adriana is joined today by Trisha de Guzman, editor at Farrar Straus Giroux Books for Young Readers. Adriana and Trisha, thank you for joining us. Take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to be in conversation with the best author in the world, Adriana, and talk about her amazing book, which has just gotten the amazing honor, and her upcoming book, Cuba in My Pocket. So Adriana, I know that the writing process for Cuba in My Pocket was very different than the one for Nestor Lopez. It comes from a much more personal place. So what was your inspiration, and what made you decide to write this book as opposed to your sort of more usual contemporary fantasy fare?
Yeah, Cuba in My Pocket is definitely a 180 from Nestor Lopez. But there's a scene in Nestor Lopez where Nestor has come home and he is in a bad mood, and he's just being very pessimistic about the prospect of always having to move around as a military kid. And he's sitting down with his abuela and he's complaining to her, just like this woe is me, my life thing. And she says, you know, you're not the only one that has had to move. And she basically tells him her story of coming from Cuba to the United States. And I based that just brief scene on my dad's experience that I had heard growing up. And after I wrote that scene, I thought, you know, there's more here. There's more of a story to tell. And I really wanted to explore my dad's experiences. And so I started pestering him nonstop to tell me more stories, throwing chapters at him so that he could read them over and tell me whether or not I had gotten it right or not. And so it was an amazing experience for me to hear my dad's story, to hear him tell me things I had absolutely no idea he had experienced or gone through when I was growing up. A lot of the things were new to me. So it was really important for me to get these stories down and to put it into a book. I think even more so because he passed away in November. And so it's just exciting to have this book out. Sorry.
Yeah, I remember when we were in edits for this book, I think like every email that I sent you was like, I teared up at this part and this part. No matter how many times that I read it, I just keep getting like so emotional, and
Yeah.
you can really see the love and care in the pages. I love it. And I think one of the things that we talk about a lot in our editorial relationship is the importance of highlighting Latinx voices and experiences in a way that is like relatable and not so driven by trauma. And I think you do a wonderful job of that in both of your books, despite like their differences. I think like Nestor is sort of like humor with a touch of drama and seriousness, and then Cuba in My Pocket is like drama and seriousness with a touch of humor.
Yeah.
And when it comes to that in your writing process, do you think it's like something that you're consciously aware of, like balancing the whole time, or does it just kind of come naturally to you?
I think part of it is a little natural just because that's my personality. I tend to make jokes when I'm uncomfortable. So my characters tend to do the same thing. But I think too, readers need a break from seriousness and heaviness sometimes when they're reading a story. I personally, as a reader, don't enjoy stories that are only serious because I like that kind of balance between humor and lighter moments and then some heavier moments. So I tried to do that with Nestor. But like you said, it was kind of the opposite. Nestor has a lot of adventurous and fun and exciting moments, but I really did want to honor the experience of military kids, and that is going to come with a little bit of heaviness. And so I definitely wanted to put that in there. And then with Cuba in My Pocket, it was kind of flipped. This was a story that could have been incredibly serious and kind of a just heavy moment after heavy moment, but that wasn't my dad. I get some of, well, not some, quite a bit of my silliness from him. And so just, you know, to stay true to his voice and to stay true to him, of course, they're going to talk about the Coke that Che Guevara formulated, turning you into a zombie. Of course, you know, he's going to just be silly about certain things. He's going to be obsessed with food. So yeah, it was really fun to put those moments in a story that was very emotional to write. But I think in the end, it makes it a more complete picture of who my dad was.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the way that your main character, i.e. your dad, I guess, Kumba, just goes through such a transformation in the book, but he never really loses that spark of joy and playfulness, which to me feels really relatable and like true to life. So I love that. And like, I know as your editor, like how much heart that you and thought you went into this book. So I'm wondering, for you, when you think of it being placed in a reader's hands, what do you hope they take from it and like remember about Cuba in My Pocket?
I think, you know, universally, even though this is a very specific story about a very specific moment in history, you know, the Pedro Pan children that came over from Cuba to the US in the 1960s, the emotions and the journeys are still universal. And so I would really hope that, one, young readers see that, you know, no matter the uphill battle you seem to be facing, not only is there hope, but surrounding yourself with people who will support you and encourage you is probably one of the most important things, because that's the concept of found family always seems to make its way into my stories, and that definitely happens in Cuba in My Pocket. But I think also, you know, the topic of immigration is always seems to be at the forefront, and I want to show the kindness that my dad experienced and the care. because I hope that we would continue that. And that's really important for me to convey, to one, honor the people that did take care of him when he first came to the US, and hopefully, in a sense, provide an example to encourage others to perhaps do the same today.
So beautifully put. As you were talking, I was thinking of my next question about like which characters aside from Kumba were your favorite to write or you enjoyed the most, and just like running through them for my own personal kind of like favorite, there were so many that came to the forefront because it's true, he just comes across so many lovely and warm and like supportive people throughout his journey, which is so hopeful. And as you know, my favorite character from Nestor Lopez is Cuervito, because he's the sassiest character, even though he's a raven. So I put that question to you. Who was your favorite in Cuba in My Pocket besides your main character?
I found that I absolutely adore writing secondary characters. I don't know how I would swing it, but if I could write a book that only had, like, there was technically no main character and it only had secondary characters, I would totally do that. Yeah, so I love that Cuervito is your favorite in Nestor Lopez, because that's the character that's most like me, because he's absolutely ridiculous. So I love that that's your favorite. For Cuba in My Pocket, the ones that I had the most fun writing, when Kumba is still in Cuba and he has his group of friends, I really, really love Serapio. Because I always love, to me, Serapio is the Talib equivalent in Cuba in My Pocket. I like writing secondary characters that provide a moment of levity. And so when Kumba is kind of down on himself, Serapio is going to say something foolish, do something silly, just to provide a little bit of lightness. But at the same time, Serapio in the story goes through quite an emotional journey, because he ends up in the United States as well and has some different things that he's dealing with. So I do like the fact that not only am I using him to kind of provide some humor, that he still has some emotional moments of his own too. So he's really kind of a full character. But then I also like Alejandro, because he's the big brother that Kumba never had, and so he was a lot of fun to write. But yeah, I think those are my two favorites that I would probably give their own books to, with no main character. They're just somehow functioning still as secondary characters.
How did I know you were going to say Serapio? That was my hunch. Of course, you would
like,
love the silliest character.
Pick the silliest character, and that's probably going to be the one.
And it's funny that you bring those two up, because I think Serapio and Alejandro, like his Kumba's friend and Kumba's like sort of brother figure, play like these roles of like friends and people that he can be silly around, but they also have these like unique ways of supporting him that maybe aren't as straightforward as you'd think. So they're not like sitting around kind of like talking about their feelings or like giving each other gifts, but in their own ways, you know, show their support and care to Kumba. And I think that's really beautiful to see. With that said, I think that we're running out of time. Is that correct?
Thank you so much for that wonderful conversation. I was just popping in, and we can't wait to read Cuba in My Pocket, Adriana, and we can't wait to celebrate your Pour While Pray win at ALA Annual this year. So much to celebrate. As I mentioned, everyone, Cuba in My Pocket will be on sale September 21st. It is available, a digital ARC is available on NetGalley. It's available in the grid that we shared in the chat. And Adriana and Trisha, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us. I appreciate everybody for listening.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. And with that, we're going to move into the title presentation portion of our presentation today, starting with picture books. The first picture book I'm going to talk about is This Very Tree. Eisner Award nominee and native New Yorker Sean Rubin writes a powerfully moving story about healing after tragedy in This Very Tree, a picture book about the Callery pear tree that survived the attacks of September 11th. Dubbed the Survivor Tree, the Callery tree stood between the Twin Towers, and a month after the attacks on 9/11, the tree was discovered to be beneath the rubble, and shockingly, it had survived. It was transported to the Bronx and it was nursed back to health. Almost a decade later, their survivor tree returned home and was planted in the 9/11 memorial to provide beauty, comfort, and hope to visitors. This story is told from the perspective of the tree, and it gently alludes to the events of 9/11, as you can see on the spread here. But this story focuses specifically on the tree's story. 2021 marks the 20th anniversary of this tragic event, and this reverently told story can be used to introduce the topic gently with young readers. However, this is also a story that will speak to older readers with its themes of resilience and perseverance. After this tragic event, the tree heals and regrows along with the city of New York. This story is a touching tribute to a nation rocked by tragedy, the first responders who risked their lives to save others, and to the restorative power of community. The book also includes back matter with even more details about the real tree's story. Next, Caldecott honoree Vera Brosgol brings her signature quirky humor to a brand new picture book about cherishing your memories while also learning to live in the moment. In Memory Jars, a young girl is making blueberry jam with her gran when she is struck by an idea. What if she could save all of her favorite memories in a jar, just like she does with her jam, so that she'll never run out of her favorite things? So Faridah starts saving everything. She jars her gran's freshly baked cookies. She jars her neighbor's beautiful singing voice. She jars her best friend Jack so he won't move away to Arizona. She even jars the moon and stars, until finally Faridah has saved everything but Gran, who she jars last. But as Faridah takes a bite of jam on toast, the taste brings back the memory of summer days spent picking berries with her gran and having fun with Jack. And she realizes that sometimes the most important things can't be saved forever, that we have to cherish what we have in the moment, and that memories that live within us are sometimes the sweetest of all. And best of all, this sweet picture book even includes a recipe for blueberry jam. Our next picture book, the idea for I Wish You Knew, came from Jackie Azua Kramer's work as a school counselor. She asked her students to write down what they wish she knew about them. In their answers, they told her that sometimes they came to school hungry, or that they lived in a shelter, or that their parents worked all the time, or that their parents had been deported. And their stories inspired this moving picture book. In I Wish You Knew, readers will meet Estrella, who wishes her teacher and classmates knew that her father has been deported and she misses him every day. When she sits alone at lunch or forgets her homework, she wishes they knew why. Throughout the story, readers will also meet Estrella's teachers and classmates. In their classroom sharing circle, they learn that each of them is dealing with their own personal struggle and that none of them are alone, and that together they can support each other. This story also addresses immigration and deportation in an accessible way and touches on themes of childhood uncertainty and anxiety. This is a great read for your social emotional learning units, and a Spanish language edition will also be released simultaneous with the English edition. Next, from the creative team behind the best-selling picture books Come With Me and Listen, comes a lyrical news story about two best friends, Bunny and Rabbit, who are celebrating the changing seasons and the natural wonders of the world together. They admire the beauty of the falling snow, lilacs blooming in the spring, the briny sea pickles that grow in the water during the summer, and the changing leaves in fall. And every season, the friends give each other a gift so that they will remember these wonders forever, so that they can remember it once it's gone. Rabbit rolls Bunny a ball of snow. Bunny makes Rabbit a flower chain of lilacs. The two friends enjoy the taste of briny sea pickles together and jumping in the leaves together in the fall. And by the end of the book, it is winter again, and the two friends are still together admiring what the world can make. Bunny and Rabbit will remind readers of the simple joy that can be found in nature and performing acts of kindness, and that friendship is the ultimate gift of all. In our next book, A Small Knight battles childhood anxiety in this adorable debut picture book. The king and queen hope that their child will grow up to be a proper princess, but Small Knight doesn't want to be a princess, and they are worried their parents will be upset. And Small Knight's worry grows bigger and bigger until one day it becomes an anxiety monster. So Small Knight goes on a magical quest to learn how to fight this monster. Neither the wise owl nor the queen of moths know anything about anxiety monsters, but finally, Small Knight asks a dragon, who tells them to look inside themselves. Only by confronting their own fears can Small Knight trap the anxiety monster. It might not be gone for good, but this is a touching story about learning to live with anxiety and being true to yourself in the process. Next, you may already be familiar with Lydia Sigwart's story if you listen to NPR's This American Life. On their episode, The Room of Requirement, Lydia told a story about the library in Wisconsin where her family spent every day for 6 months. She called it the year they lived at the library. For Lydia, this was a magical time, especially because of a very special librarian named Mrs. S, who always knew just the right books to share, who looked Lydia in the eyes and treated her like a grown-up. And years later, Lydia realized that the reason she and her family spent so much time in the library that year was because they were homeless. But Lydia never remembered that time as traumatic. She remembered it fondly because of Mrs. S. And as an adult, she tracked down Mrs. S to thank her for her kindness and tell her about the impact she had on Lydia's life. So impactful that Lydia grew up to become a librarian. This picture book is a love letter to libraries and a thank you letter to librarians, a story about the safe space that a library can be for a young person in need, and the feeling of being seen by a librarian who knows exactly the right book for you and believes you are a special person. I've cried every time I've read this book, and I'm tearing up a little bit now, so I would recommend having a box of tissues on hand for this book. Next, from author and illustrator Karen Katz, My America is a picture book celebrating immigration to the United States, told through the experiences of children who have come from around the world. Young readers will meet children from countries near and far and emerge with a better understanding of why their family came to America and what makes our country so varied and wonderful. They will meet children from countries like Nepal, Somalia, and Mexico, who share their love of the country they emigrated from and where they live now, their old home and their new home. And as they describe the foods they eat, the languages they've learned, and the sports they play, the differences and similarities that link us all are revealed. This is a colorful, inclusive, and inspiring story about appreciating different cultures and celebrating America's diversity. Next, there's a new kid in class, and they're different. They dress different, they talk different, they eat different, and word on the playground is they have fleas. In fact, it appears they have been raised by wolves. Nobody wants to partner with the new kid on projects, and nobody wants to sit with them during recess. Until one day, the teacher pairs up teams randomly, and a boy from class has to work on a project with the new kid at their house. But it turns out the new kid's family is really nice, and they know a lot about their project topic, and they're really funny. It turns out the new kid isn't so bad after all. This sweet and hilarious picture book by best-selling author Amy Dykman puts a new twist on the perennial new kid in school story by adding the kid raised by wolves twist. The dryly funny text is brought to life by the illustrations by Ida Caban, whose art is funny, energetic, expressive, and just bursting with fun. With lots of laughs, this book delivers an important message about accepting and befriending those who are different from us. Author-illustrator Selena Alco has a very personal connection to her new picture book, I is for Immigrant. As an immigrant herself, Selena has always felt passionate about creating children's books that promote empathy, inclusivity, and diversity. This project was inspired by an image from her popular picture book, B is for Brooklyn, which went viral on social media in 2018 as changes in immigration policy fueled a new wave of protests across the country. And that book inspired I is for Immigrant. So Selena decided to create a new ABC book celebrating the rich cultural diversity of America and the vibrant, multifaceted people who share their heritage and traditions to enrich the fabric of all of our lives. Paying homage to everything from baklava to bubble tea to bodegas and bagels through colorful mixed media art, this joyful ABC journey is a celebration of our immigrants, our neighbors, and our friends. In everyday chemistry, chemistry is all around us. This is a STEM-filled picture book about a mother and a daughter who go about their normal day together as chemical reactions in their everyday lives occur all around them. When your bread toasts, when your shampoo foams, when the playground slide rusts, those are all chemical reactions. And just as she did in her first picture book, Our World is Relative, Julia Soy breaks down a scientific concept into an appealing and accessible story for young readers. Illustrator Bonnie Pang adds a touch of magic to these everyday chemical reactions with her glowing and eye-catching illustrations. And extensive back matter shares more information about chemical reactions and offers other examples for young scientists who want to learn more about chemical reactions. Speaking of STEM-filled books, Thank You, Dr. Salk is a nonfiction picture book about Dr. Jonas Salk, who developed the vaccine to fight polio. Jonas grew up watching people suffer from polio, and he vowed that he would help beat the disease. Although he was a quiet student, he drew strength from his Jewish religion and dreamed of healing the world. He studied hard, went to medical school, and got to work developing vaccines. And when people around the world heard about his work, he became famous, and the March of Dimes was founded to help fund his research. When the vaccine was finally developed and after the results were carefully studied, millions of people received their doses. And most amazingly of all, Dr. Salk did not patent his vaccine. He gave it away for free. This remarkable nonfiction picture book can be used to draw connections to current events and start conversations about the history of vaccines and epidemics. The book also includes more back matter about the life of Dr. Salk and how vaccines work. So for younger readers and students who may be hearing about some of these topics on the news, this is a perfect primer on the subject. Ada Twist, Scientist, meets the Blob in this hilarious and STEM-filled picture book. Frankenslime is a clever twist on the Frankenstein story with a special ingredient that all the kids I know are obsessed with. You guessed it, slime. Victoria Franken is a slime scientist who has perfected her recipe for slimes of every color, glow-in-the-dark slime, intergalactic slime, and more with the help of her dog assistant, Igor. But one dark and stormy night, her latest experiment goes awry, and her newest creation comes alive. Victoria and Igor are chased down by their new slime creation, only to discover, spoiler alert, that he just wants to make sure Victoria wrote down the secret recipe. This picture book celebrates the joy of experimenting, exploring the scientific method, and the importance of recording and observations and results. Best of all, the book includes some of Victoria's best slime recipes that kids can try at home, although you'll notice that the secret formula that brought her slime to life is missing from the book, maybe thankfully for some of the parents who are listening. Stacey McAnulty's Our Universe series are certified kid favorite classroom read-alouds, and we are thrilled to have a new nonfiction picture book from her about the power of human brains as told by a zombie. Did you know that our brains are about 75% water and 100% delicious? In this funny and fact-filled picture book, a zombie chef who has sworn off eating brains introduces readers to our most powerful and appetizing organ. From learning about how the brain processes messages from our 5 senses to learning why wrinkly human brains are so much more powerful than smooth mouse brains, this is a hilarious introduction to the organ that does it all. And maybe after all is said and done, you'll let the zombie taste your brain? Maybe just a little bit? No? Well, then be sure to use your brain on something useful, like reading this book, packed with kid-friendly facts and illustrated by Matthew Rivera, who brings this book to life, or life after death, with his hilarious illustrations. And from the team behind the hugely popular New York Times bestseller, Be Kind, comes a new picture book about what it means to be strong. In this inspiring and moving story, our main character, Tanisha, thinks she is not strong because she can't climb the rock wall at school. But her parents explain there are so many ways to be strong. It's not just about muscle strength. Her dad tells her that being strong is about showing up, like their neighborhood does when they band together to do community service for the homeless. Being strong is about speaking up when something is wrong, just like her mom did when she saw a crosswalk that needed a crossing guard. And being strong is about not giving up, just like her grandma Z, who became a runner even though she could hardly jog a block at first. And this inspires Tanisha to show up, speak up, and not give up at her school. So she helps her classmates with their homework, even when she wants to go outside and play. She asks her school to create a lunch table where all students are welcome to sit and make friends, so no one will ever feel alone at lunch. And she practices her accordion every day until she's ready to perform in the talent show. This gentle story demonstrates that being strong is about determination, bravery, and perseverance, and that we're stronger when we work together, and asking for help doesn't make us weak. This is a perfect storytime read that will inspire kids to take action in their schools and communities and be strong for themselves and others. And finally, we have so many more books coming in some of our most popular and best-selling series, including Pout Pout Fish, Bad Kitty, Nerdy Babies, If Animals Tried to Be Kind, and The Truth About Parrots. We encourage you to check those out. There are links to all of those in the grid that we shared in the chat. And now I'll pass the mic back to Mary to share some of our upcoming must-read middle grade titles.
Hello, thank you, Kristen, for those great presentations. I was chuckling along, especially to your Frankenslime presentation. I am thrilled to introduce you to some of our middle grade titles and chapter books coming out this spring, starting with Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Boy by Emmanuel Acho. This book offers an anti-racism education for middle grade readers designed to incite conversations between parents and kids about racism. You may recognize the name. Acho's Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Man has gone from a viral web series to an instant New York Times best-selling adult book, opening up a dialogue about racism. Now, almost a year after George Floyd's murder, which was the catalyst for the series, Acho is introducing his message to the next generation. While the format is the same as the adult version, Osho answers a series of FAQs about race. This book is a true adaptation of the book. It's offering all new messages and anecdotes that address the racial divide specifically for younger generations. The book answers questions about race that white and non-Black children are seldom brave enough to ask, laying out the answers in a digestible way and providing a tool that young people can use to educate themselves and short-circuit racism within their lives and communities. Fitz and Cleo is the first in a new early graphic novel chapter book series by dynamite husband and wife team Jonathan Stutzman and Heather Fox. I've had the pleasure of working with Jonathan and Heather on their picture books, Llama Destroys the World and Llama Unleashes the Alpacalypse, and I'm delighted to see them bringing their A+ sense of humor to their first graphic novel series. Fitz and Cleo are siblings by chance and best friends by choice. These characters are so wonderfully defined. Fitz is science-minded and Cleo is more happy-go-lucky. Readers will follow them through 11 stories, starting with their discovery of the vicious monster who lives in the attic, who turns out to be a very sweet kitty that Cleo promptly names Mr. Boo. This series highlights just how fun the world can be when you mix adventure together with great friends. You can hand this to fans of Narwhal and Jelly or Owlie. Next up, Bystander by James Preller. This book has been a mainstay of One School, One Book choices for years now. And for years, readers have asked James whether would be up for writing a follow-up to Bystander, and now the answer is finally yes. While Upstander is a companion to Bystander, it also very much stands alone, so don't hesitate to share this book with readers who are new to James Preller. The heart of the story is about what each of our responsibilities are to those around us to speak out against bullying. Mary O'Malley is juggling a lot. Her family is preoccupied with her older brother's drug addiction and doesn't have anyone to talk to, except maybe Griffin, the boy at school whose older sister runs in the same crowd as her older brother. Things become more complicated when two of her friends slam another girl online, and she has to make a decision about how to support or not support a fellow classmate. As in real life, she makes mistakes, and I love how James offers a realistic portrayal of what it's like not just to experience bullying, but to witness it and to decide what your responsibility is in the situation. Mike Dawson has been nominated for multiple Eisner and Ignatz Awards, and we're thrilled to have his next graphic novel, The Fifth Quarter, on our list this May. This heartfelt combination of basketball and middle school growing pains is an honest looking up, finding your passion, and using it to propel you through the tougher moments in life. The fifth quarter mentioned in the title is the extra period in a basketball game where the players who are not on the A team have the opportunity to practice their skills. As anyone who has ever played junior varsity sports knows, just because you're not on the A team doesn't mean the stakes feel any less high when you're on the court or on the field. Lori pursues her passion with a tenacity that'll be recognizable to so many young readers while also navigating the social dynamics of fourth grade. Contemporary graphic novels continue to dominate children's publishing, and we're thrilled to have this slam dunk of a graphic novel on our list. The Road to Wherever has all of the best features of a road trip and coming-of-age tale. 11-year-old June, short for Henry Jr., is in the care of his older Ford men cousins, and Ford refers to, of course, you can probably tell from the cover, cars, and is taken on a road trip that introduces him to a wonderful cast of quirky but decent people, all of whom have a car and a story to share. The road trip, perhaps predictably, but no less wonderfully, parallels an inner road trip as June works through a lot of internal anger over the sudden disappearance of his father, a vet with PTSD. Every character June encounters on the road adds layers to this rich tale, including a personal favorite, Mrs. McBean, who is a retired teacher. Her husband was killed 50 years ago by white supremacists, and she's on a mission to take her prized Thunderbird for one more ride before her cancer claims her. John Bradley is a former reporter for the Washington Post, Esquire, and Sports Illustrated, and his descriptions of these classic cars are so brilliant. Hand this to fans of Watt Key and Carl Hyacin for a guaranteed hit. We have had the absolute pleasure of publishing Josephine Cameron's first two books, Maybe a Mermaid and A Dog-Friendly Town, and are thrilled to have an extremely kid-friendly book coming this spring, Not All Heroes. This follows another 11-year-old dealing with grief, in this case, the death of her younger brother. Zinnia's family moves across the country to have a fresh start following the earth-shaking loss, and she's left wondering how she can possibly move on. Heroes have a way of finding us just at the right time, and that is definitely the case with Chris, Zinnia's neighbor, who she finds climbing a fire escape wearing a cape. Soon, Zinnia finds herself in a secret club for kids who want to be heroes. While the reality shifters don't have real superpowers, they do have the power to make positive change in their neighborhoods, which is just the sort of thing Zinnia is looking for. I think Kirkus's starred review captures what makes this book so special best. In their words, with its clear, accessible writing, this suspenseful story masterfully juggles many topics: grief, self-assurance, the need for individual, collective, and systemic approaches to ableism, poverty, and other social ills, in the fine line between extreme altruism and self-aggrandizement. The Edge of Strange Hollow reads like a modern fairy tale. Gabrielle Byrne uses Celtic folklore and mythology to help craft this contemporary middle grade fantasy. In Gabrielle's second book, Poppy Sunshine isn't like everyone else in Strange Hollow. She's not afraid of the Grimwood, home to magical creatures like shapeshifters, fairies, witches, and even a three-headed dog. Behind the wood from her parents, Poppy longs to learn everything about it and imagines joining her mother and father as they hunt the forest's magical objects. So when her only family disappears on a routine expedition, she and her friends must break every rule to save them. But Poppy soon discovers that things in the Grimwood are rarely what they seem, and the monsters who took her parents may not be monsters at all. Chris Barron entered the kidlit scene with his debut, All of Me, in 2019, which went on to become a Southern California Independent Booksellers Association bestseller, a Book Riot Best Children's Book about Kindness, a Nerdy Book Club Novels and Verse Award winner, and an NCTE Notable Book. His second book, The Magical Imperfect, is a middle grade novel in verse about a Jewish boy who befriends an outcast girl. The book centers a richly diverse community of people who came to the United States through California's Angel Island. But more specifically, it's about a boy named Ian who has stopped speaking since his mother left. He works every day after school with his grandfather in his store on the main street of town. When one day Ethan just delivers a package to the house on the end of the Old Forest Road, he realizes that the house belongs to a mysterious girl people in town call the Creature. It's not long before these two outcasts become friends and discover something ancient, something magical, and something they never expected that would change them forever. The two main characters, Ethan and Malia, are challenged. One cannot speak, and one has been ravaged by a skin condition. Against all odds, they become friends and show others in their community what it means to be kind and accepting. The author Chris based Ethan's story loosely on his family's immigration story and based Malia on his wife, who is Filipina and suffers from eczema. Chris explains that he wrote this book in verse to provide a doorway to the internal landscape of the characters' lives. So much of what we go through is on the inside, and poetry provides the rhythms, the movements, the imagery, and the beautiful white space on the page to allow the reader to fully engage with the depths of these characters' lives. I think Melissa just put into the chat that this is a must read for everyone, and I could not agree more. Nidhi Chinani, the author of Jukebox and Pashmina, lives in a home with over 1,800 records. That's right, 1,800 records. Jukebox is her highly anticipated next graphic novel following her debut, Pashmina, which was showered with praise, including being named one of Chicago Public Library's best of the best. Jukebox is a time-traveling musical tale about family and courage, in which a mysterious jukebox, old vinyl records, and cryptic notes on music history are Shaheen's only clues to her father's abrupt disappearance. Nidhi remembers the first moment the idea for this book came to her. She was talking about music and vinyl records with her husband. He's a vinyl collector. And they were talking about this, and then all of a sudden an idea came to her. It was this image of two girls discovering a giant magic jukebox in their attic. She rarely breaks a conversation to go draw an idea, but she just had to stop everything and get this down while she was thinking about it. And that was in 2014. From the inception to the final book, she wanted to tell a story about two brown girls who embark on an adventure and visit history populated by people of color. She rejected the typical trope of two girls who bicker. Their relationship is loving, it's supportive, and conflict isn't with the other person, it's internal. They each have to learn to believe in themselves and allow the other person to grow. They're also just really sweet girls who like to read and love to listen to vinyl, and as a studious book nerd herself, Nidhi adored creating leads who are grounded first-generation kids. If I was at an in-person event with all of you, I would ask for a show of hands of how many people in the room know that Nebraska used to be the home to rhinos, elephants, and giraffes 12 million years ago. In 1953, a 17-year-old farmer made an incredible discovery that changed everything we know about Nebraska. The explosion of a supervolcano 1,000 miles from Nebraska sent a blanket of ash that buried these animals for millennia in the exact positions they were at their death until the 1950s, when we uncovered the 200 perfectly preserved fossils. This is the first book. The very first book, I should say, about the ashfall fossil beds. Allison Pierce Stevens has a PhD in ecology, evolution, and animal behavior, and has worked with many of the ashfall researchers at the University of Nebraska State Museum to write this book. It's absolutely jam-packed with photos and illustrations to take students behind the scenes of this uncovery of so much history to life. So highly recommend this for anyone looking for great middle grade nonfiction. I like the combination too of historical photographs, but then also illustrations by Matt Hoyne to show what it might have looked like back before the ashfall. Lucy in the Sky. In this contemporary graphic novel, 12-year-old Lucy discovers her father's collection of Beatles records and is inspired to form an all-girl rock band. Lucy is one of those characters that you can't help but feel for. She lives with her single father, and her mother is very much out of the picture. Add to that the fact that her grandmother is going through chemotherapy, and it all adds up to a very stressful home situation. Music offers an escape for so many of us, and who hasn't escaped with a Beatles album? Kiara Brinkman and Sean Cheeky are a husband and wife team, and they've created a graphic novel that's equal parts crowd-pleasing and sophisticated. This story of growth and friendship will pull in fans from All Summer Long, Roller Girl, and Click. In Big Apple Diaries, a heartfelt diary-style graphic novel by Alyssa Bermudez, a young New Yorker doodles her way through middle school until September 11, 2001. A terrorist attack that leaves her wondering if she can ever be a kid again. Everything in Big Apple Diaries is either 100% true, exaggerated but based on something real, or directly as Alyssa wrote it in her middle school diaries. You just go to this spread so you can get a sense of the format. She started sharing her old diary entries with friends and family about 7 years ago, and she picked out some of her favorites and knew she had to put pictures with them. She created comics of these standalone entries and was encouraged to explore this idea as more people reacted to them with their own similar memories of this traumatic transformational time. It wasn't until she moved away from New York City that she realized how important that part of the story was too. People kept asking her what it was like to grow up in New York City, so she decided she would finally show them. Alyssa also discusses being a kid with mixed heritage in more than one home in this book. Some of the hardest things she had to deal with as a teen were race and identity. It seemed like she had to be one thing or the other, and having parents with mixed backgrounds and two homes in different boroughs made it feel like she didn't belong in either world. The pressure she felt to conform to one identity is one many kids will identify with. Alyssa hopes that readers can relate to this heartfelt feelings of trying to fit in, experiencing big changes, and navigating where to go next. She hopes they can feel that it's normal to not always feel normal. And more than anything, she hopes that readers will keep their own diaries and/or drawings to inspire and remind their future selves of how they managed to overcome challenges. The Plentiful Darkness. From the graveyard book to doll bones, middle grade readers love imaginative, atmospheric stories about things that go bump in the night. And Heather Katzner is exceptionally good at writing inviting spooky stories. In the plentiful darkness, Rooney Dabara, an orphan girl, chases a thieving boy into a magician's land of starless, moonless gloom where children have gone missing before her. In order to survive on her own, she gets moonlight from the evening sky. As with so many of the young protagonists I've discussed here today, she is up against so much. She has to hold her own against the rival roughhouse boys and ultimately team up with someone she believed an enemy to face down the magician who has trapped so many children. And finally, the last middle grade title I'll present today, which probably doesn't need much introduction, is Friends Forever, which is the follow-up to the mega best-selling Real Friends and Best Friends graphic memoirs by Shannon Hale and Win Pham. This duo, who are also best friends in real life, are back with this conclusion to the Friends trilogy, Friends Forever, a story about learning to love yourself exactly as you are. The devoted readers of the series will have aged with Shannon, and she's now in the 8th grade. Everything keeps changing. Her classmates are starting to date each other, but nobody wants to date her, and no matter how hard she tries, she can never seem to be happy. Shannon is working through her insecurities and undiagnosed depression, but this is an uplifting story. With their signature humor, warmth, and insight, Shannon and Win have crafted another incredible love letter to their younger selves. And I love this quote from the New York Times. It says, "Somehow Hale and Pham have found a way to make the normal girl into the ultimate cool girl." Before we go on to young adults, just to note that there are links in our handout for these popular and best-selling continuing series, including Agent Moose, Blueberry and Pancakes, our history comic series, and more. And also we have more books available on NetGalley, so please do check out that handout to see more about what's coming up from MacKids. With that, I will hand it over to Elise to preview our young adult titles.
Hello, everyone. I'm so excited to talk to you about our young adult titles today. First up, we have The Burning Young Readers Edition by Tim Madigan, adapted by Hilary Beard. This is on sale May 11th, so super soon. The critically acclaimed nonfiction adult book, The Burning, was proclaimed by the New York Times Book Review as powerful, and it now has a young reader's adaptation. This book is an essential read for the next generation, complete with updates that connect the historical significance of the massacre to the ongoing struggle for racial justice in America. Philadelphia resident and author Hilary Beard has taken The Burning by Tim Madigan and explored from a Black woman's perspective the currents of hatred, racism, and mistrust that led to Greenwood's devastation, as well as the subsequent silence that surrounded this tragedy. But more importantly, the book spotlights Greenwood at the height of its prosperity and the strength and resilience of those who lived there. Hilary and Tim are really powerful in conversation and have said that it seems like they should be at odds of the spectrum as a white man and a Black woman, but they hope their dialogue inspires others to get uncomfortable and learn from each other. Okay, next we have The Ones We're Meant to Find by Joan Hu. When a series of man-made disasters rocks the planet, a 16-year-old STEM prodigy will have to decide if she's ready to use science to help humanity. With its cinematic storytelling, inventive world building, and relatable teen heroines, this book is perfect for fans of Warcross and the Fifth Wave. Joan's debut fantasy, The Descendant of the Crane, was a publisher's lunch buzz book and featured on several publications, including Barnes & Noble Teens' 20 of our most anticipated YA debuts of 2019 and BuzzFeed's 24 YA books to devour during Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. This fun and fresh YA novel, full of twists and turns, is We Were Liars with sci-fi scope meets Lost with a satisfying resolution. And next we have In the Ravenous Dark by A.M. Strickland. A pansexual blood mage reluctantly teams up with an undead spirit to start a rebellion among the living and the dead in this dark YA fantasy by A.M. Strickland. Author of Beyond the Black Door, whom Richard Kadri calls a storyteller of both grace and power. This book shows that you can carve out your own space and find people who love you for who you are. True and supportive family can also be chosen. With the recent success of queer fantasy YAs, such as Adam Silvera's Infinity Sun and Natasha Yun's Girls of Paper and Fire, readers have shown that they are eager for more fantasy with queer protagonists. Increasingly, YA fantasy hits feature dark, evocative settings with adult themes, from Sarah J. Maas's Court series to Holly Black's Folk of the Air series to Sarah Holland's Everless, and this book is a solid editorial comp for those titles. A.M. Strickland's Beyond the Black Door got great reviews from Kirkus, Booklist, SLJ, and The Bulletin, as well as media coverage from Tor.com, Publishers Weekly, Book Riot, We Need Diverse Books, and more. All right, now on to Ace of Spades by Faridah Abike-lyimide. This is a YA social thriller about two students at an elite prep school and the sinister plot against them. Full of high stakes, heart-pounding suspense, and nonstop twists, this story will have readers hooked from the beginning to the end. This story not only touches on racism and white supremacy, pertinent themes given the continuous state-sanctioned murder of Black people, but also homophobia, class, privilege, and more, other topics that unfortunately remain very relevant in today's world. Multiple characters identify as members of the LGBTQIA community, including the two protagonists. With the suspense of Pretty Little Liars and the social commentary of Get Out, this book is perfect for fans of both. We won this in a very heated auction and have signed up another standalone with Faridah. And we found out today that Ace of Spades received a star from Publishers Weekly. We're excited to get this one in the hands of readers. All right, Rising Like a Storm. So last year we launched masterful storyteller Tanaz Bhatana's Wrath of Ambar duology with Hunted by the Sky. This June, this duology, inspired by medieval India, concludes with Rising Like a Storm, making it the perfect binge reading treat for readers to enjoy both books at once this summer. The world of this duology is distinct and unique, firmly grounded in the particulars of Indian culture, and is thoroughly accessible. The developments to magic and characters elevate the setting even within the duology. In the first book, we're introduced to Gul and Kavas, two teens brought together by dangerous circumstances on a quest to make Ambar into a better and more just world than they've ever known. The women of Ambar are the driving forces behind action, battles, and war. Their loyalty, dynamism, and energy are enthralling and inspiring. In the concluding installment of the Wrath of Ambar duology, Gul and Kavas must unite their magical forces and hold on to their growing romance to save the kingdom from tyranny. As with Tomi Adeyemi's Legacy of Orisha series and Hasha Faisal's The Sands of Arawaya, The Sands of Arawaya duology. This duology is part of a growing library of YA fantasy series that is taking fantasy out of the West. A YA novel in verse. Next up is MOTH by Amber McBride. I'm super excited about this one personally. So this is about a teen girl who is grieving the deaths of her family and a teen boy who crosses her path. The unlikely duo bond as they confront their past trauma by taking a road trip across the country together. This is a thrilling and artful novel about the ache for self-discovery, the tumultuous magic of first love, and the ways that our memories and our roots steer us through the universe. McBride's exquisite language and beautifully executed pacing captures the unique way in which Moth and Sani communicate with each other. The story also delivers a surprise twist at the end, and that takes it to another level as a ghost story about family ties. The main character is Black, as is the author, and the love interest is Navajo, as is part of the author's family. We know that novels in verse bring accessibility for many readers. This will appeal to fans of that genre and to readers who are looking for fresh, diverse voices. And next, by April Henry, we have The Eyes of the Forest. After a best-selling fantasy writer disappears, only his biggest fan believes he's in danger. Instead of rereading his books, she must venture into the real world to uncover the truth in this fast-paced mystery. Master mystery writer April Henry weaves another heart-stopping young adult thriller in a story that seamlessly blends suspense with an exploration of fan culture. YA psychological thrillers are growing increasingly popular. April is one of the pioneers in the genre with a handful of books in the space to date, most of which are highly awarded and continue to sell strongly. April is a highly decorated State Award winner and Scholastic Book Club bestselling author, as well as a New York Times bestselling adult author, and she's built a terrific teen following with her YA mysteries. And we have May the Best Man Win by ZR Ellor. So ZR Ellor may be new to the YA contemporary space, but his debut novel, May the Best Man Win, has quickly become one of the most anticipated titles of the year. With his bold and commercial writing style, Ellor has created an honest story about trans identity and the terrible weight placed on queer teenagers struggling to find their place in an uncaring society. Jeremy Harkis, a trans boy, and his ex-boyfriend Lucas Rivers enter into a throwdown battle for the title of Homecoming King. When they take their rivalry too far, they'll have to face the hurt they're both hiding and the lingering butterflies they can't deny. In the vein of novels like Simon versus the Homo sapiens Agenda and Dumplin', this story delivers some swoon-worthy romance, but doesn't shy away from the emotionally weighted moments. ZR tapped into his own lived experience as a trans and autistic man to craft his characters, and fun fact, he wrote the first draft in 3 weeks. May the Best Man Win is a much-needed story that explores the complexity of gender identity, neurodiversity, and what it means to be an ally, and the importance of finding a supportive queer community. Okay, now we have A Night Twice as Long by Andrew Simonette. Andrew Simonette's debut novel, YA novel, Wilder, garnered 2-star reviews and glowing praise. In A Night Twice as Long, the blackout has been going on for 3 weeks, but Alex feels like she's been living in the darkness for a year, ever since her brother, who has autism, was removed from the house, something Alex blames herself for. So when her best friend Anthony asked her to trek to another town to figure out the truth about the blackout, Alex says yes. Like Alex, the author, Andrew Simonette, has a brother living with autism. He sensitively depicts complicated love between the siblings. Andrew Simonette is a choreography and writer in Philadelphia, and he wants his writing to also be an exploration of how we occupy bodies in the world. His first novel, Wilder, was published in 2018, and we're excited that he's coming out with this next one. Okay. Now we have The Sea is Salt and So Am I. So YA debut author Cassandra Hart is coming out with this book on June 8th. This is a stunning multi-point of view contemporary that's I'll Give You the Sun meets Normal People. Called Achingly Beautiful by #1 New York Times bestselling author Rachel Lippincott, this tale presents an intimate and unflinchingly honest portrait of 3 teens ensnared in a web of secrets and unspoken feelings. Cassandra was the same age as her 3 main characters when she began drafting their story, and over the span of a decade, she revisited it to include inspiration from growing up in Maine and navigating her own roller coaster of mental health. Cassandra, who's been crafting this compulsively readable tale of secrets, loyalty, and lies for so long, interweaves elements that touch on important issues that are acutely relevant to teens everywhere: disability, mental health, suicide, and climate change, all thoughtfully and sensitively discussed. And we have The Marvelous. From the author of Let's Talk About Love and If It Makes You Happy, this exuberant YA novel follows 6 teens locked together in a mansion, contending for a life-changing cash prize in a competition run by a reclusive heiress. After mysteriously disappearing for a year, social media darling Jewel makes her dramatic return with an announcement. She has chosen a few lucky Golden Rule users to spend an unforgettable weekend at her private estate. But once they arrive, Jewel ingeniously flips the script. The guests are now players in an elaborate estate-wide game, and she's tailored every challenge and obstacle to test whether they have what it takes to win at any cost. It's a story about friendship. It's about meeting your idols and realizing they're people too. And it's told from the perspective of the 3 players, all teenage Black girls. The youngest is 15 years old and quite the firecracker. Can's first 2 YA novels were targeted toward older teens. With The Marvelous, she wanted to be inclusive of a younger audience. The prose is peppered with puns, wordplay, and limericks that revolve around classic literature and pop culture, but it's also very accessible to those who aren't as into pop culture. She wanted to write a story that reflected the teens of today who grew up with technology because they don't know what life is like without the internet. Okay, now we have Darling. So a teen girl finds herself lost on a dangerous adventure in this modern day reimagining of Peter Pan. In the vein of Dorothy Must Die, without the fantasy, Darling's serious issues and gritty setting, an authentic Chicago rendered skillfully by resident Ancrum, turned Peter Pan totally on its head. Even for readers who are unfamiliar with Peter Pan, the book is a great YA thriller as Wendy is plunged into a thrill ride adventure through Chicago over the course of one night with a major central twist. Kay Ancrum creates the same queer and racially diverse cast she brought to her previous books, this time drawing out the class, economic, and racial divisions of Chicago, and mining J.M. Barrie's original book for its buried themes of sexism, emotional abuse, and toxic masculinity. Kay Ancrum's first two books racked up serious praise. School and Library Journal said The Wicker King will keep teens riveted, and Booklist starred review of The Weight of the Stars called it as bright as it is stellar. Darling is the author's most commercial idea by far, and it feels like it could be her biggest breakout moment yet. Next is Dangerous Play by Emma Kress. Dangerous Play is Emma Kress's debut novel. It's about playing sports and keeping score, empowerment and courage, teamwork and friendship, rape culture and feminism, justice and revenge, and kick butt girls. After Zoe is sexually assaulted at a party, she has a new goal. That no girl should feel unsafe again. She and her field hockey teammates become activists and find out where it crosses the line with turning into vigilantes. This may just cost Zoe the championship, her scholarship, and her freedom. The book examines what happened to a group of girls when rape culture goes unchecked. Emma's mom is part of a consciousness-raising group, and she grew up listening to their feminism and friendship, which inspired this book. Emma is a former teacher of almost 20 years, teaching high school for more than 10 of those years. Okay. Blade of Secrets by Tricia Levenseller. This book needs no introduction. It is so exciting that we're getting to walk Tricia through this book. So #1 New York Times bestselling author Kendara Blake of the 3 Dark Crown series called The Shadows Between Us, a decadent and wickedly addictive fantasy. The book was also a Sci-Fi Wire recommended romance read and an Amazon Best Book of 2019. So it's no wonder we're craving more. The first book in Tricia Levenseller's exciting new YA fantasy duology is about 2 sisters who are forced to go on the run to protect the world from the most powerful magical sword that one of them has ever made. Tricia's heroines are always feminist and multifaceted, but Ziva is particularly special. Not only does she support her family and fight to save the world from corrupt political leaders and warlords, but she does it while dealing with severe social anxiety. By writing her own experience with social anxiety into Ziva, Tricia aims to introduce even more vulnerability with her readers. Tricia has excelled at creating romantic tension that readers love, and this book is no exception. With this series, there are 2 different romances for fans to swoon over, and just you wait, the next book set to come out in the Bladesmith duology, which will pub in 2022, will up the ante even more on the romance front. This line from BCCB is a wonderful, comprehensive review. This fast-paced novel caters to popular romance and fantasy tropes while still feeling fresh, but it really shines in its portrayal of Ziva, who has an anxiety disorder. Readers will be craving not just the sequel, but also more fantasy fiction that handles disabilities. And we have even more great books available on NetGalley. Be sure to check out books like This Is for Tonight, It Goes Like This, The Immortal Game, Kiss and Repeat, and more. Thank you.
With that, that brings us to the end of our presentation today. Thank you all for joining us today. It has been an absolute pleasure. Please do not forget to subscribe to our newsletter to keep in touch, and our contact information is on the screen, and we're always here to talk about books. With that, take care, everyone. A recording will follow. Bye.
Thanks so much for joining us, everyone. Have a great day.